And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointing episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering Indiana women's basketball. This is our 108th episode recorded on Monday, February 19th, 2024. I'm your host, Kathy Amos, alongside my co-host, Jeff Marlow. And today we will be breaking down your number 14, number 12 Indiana Hoosiers loss of 86-66 on the road to the Illinois Fighting Illini. That loss brings their record to 21-4 overall and 12-3 in the conference. But before we get into the details of the game, we'll start our show as we do every show, and that's with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And Jeff, in a game where I think there were a lot of runs in this game, mainly for Illinois, unfortunately, their runs were a lot longer and a lot deeper than ours. We had a lot of droughts in the game. There wasn't really a whole lot that you can kind of pick to and point to for a Hoosier Proud banner moment. It was really a game of where we just kind of came out from the beginning and just kind of got punched in the mouth with Illinois. And, they took a fairly, we played all right in that first quarter, only down by one. But boy, they really punched us in the mouth in particular in that second quarter, going into halftime with a 16-point deficit. So really hard to find a banner moment. But I think for me, I'm going to go to the first quarter at the 2:26 mark when finally, after I think around 7 games off, Sydney Parrish finally comes back and plays and enters the game. And I think that this is important because, Sydney was a very key piece to our team before her foot injury. And while she didn't start tonight and she didn't really play a whole lot, hopefully this is going to give her some time to get some rust off before we have to head back home on a fairly quick turnaround and with a really quick, a tough opponent coming up with Iowa coming in. So for me, I think Sydney Parrish coming back into the game and being back on the floor for us was my Hoosier Proud banner moment for today. So for us, always, our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, the presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, who includes Assembly Call and Crimson Cast. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools, or not even schools. I think I saw they're partnering now with NASCAR, I believe. Is that what I saw? So,
Hendrick Motorsports and stuff.
Yeah, motorsports in general. So all kinds of new and fresh, fun things coming out from our friends over at Home Field Apparel. So, but if you're really looking for good collegiate gear, that's where they, kind of got their bread and butter on. But they have great collegiate gear for everyone, for you or anyone else in your life. So you can go to homefieldapparel.com. And if it's your first time ordering, you can use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire first order. Again, that promo code is HOME23 for 15% off. The website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. Well, with that, we normally would be talking about some news headlines, but I don't think there's been a whole lot new that I know, Jeff, to highlight here between now and our last time. So we're going to just kick it right over to you for your Marlow's musings. So, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Well, I think we've already talked about it a little bit just in your run up to the banner moment, and we've seen it with the workaholics here in the chat on the live YouTube video. It just was a bummer day. It never really. Especially once Illinois got the lead, Indiana never really seemed to get back up on their feet. They got knocked off their feet, like you said, kind of took that punch and didn't really take it very well. Kind of went to the ground and really didn't get back up. Made some runs to get back in it toward, got down to 9 a couple times, but just never could sustain enough stops to get the game back into a more manageable situation. And Kathy, I'm going to go back to this, and I know it seems like you're picking on one thing, or I'm picking on one thing, I should say, but we had a lead. We were up 13-9, I believe it was something. And I think it was 13-9, and then we subbed. And I'm not saying you can't sub. It just seemed like for once that's not been a problem with this team per se, unlike another team we both know and have talked about. But for today, it just seemed like they lost momentum when they subbed, and they never. And once they did, they never really got it back. And Illinois just kind of stepped on the throttle and went. And also, again, we'll talk about as we go throughout the show. too many players were no shows today. There were too many players
Yeah.
who did not provide enough in the stat column or on the floor, and it caught up to them against a team that we talked about back in the preseason. We thought was going to be a whole lot better record wise in the preseason. We even talked about in the preview on Wednesday night after the Wisconsin game that this game made us nervous. This is a team that's talented. They've underachieved. All right, Illinois has underachieved big time, but they're talented and they've got good guards, and they've really gotten good, or I should say good. They've gotten much better and back to where they probably should be when they've gone to their bigger lineup. They're now playing Kendall Bostic along with Hobby. I want to say Hobby. Hobby. When they started putting Bostic more to 4 rather than the 5, they've really kind of caught a spark. And this game, I even put it on the Discord as I was watching the game today, and know you were working, you watched it a little bit later, but just made me nervous all along, because this is a team that's over the last couple of years with Shauna Green as the head coach and with the players she's brought in, has played Indiana about as tough as anybody consistently.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Illinois, we talked about this again when we thought they would be one of the contenders there. They brought back something like 92% of their offensive production from last year. And for whatever reason, it just seems like it's taking them some time to gel. But from what I saw today, they're definitely gelling. And I think I heard the announcer say this is, they won 4 of their last 6. So now I guess I don't think that included today. So now 5 of their last 7 games. So they seem to be peaking at the right time, right? Like if you're going to want your team to kind of stumble a little bit at the beginning of the year and then pick it up, this is the way to do it. We'll be interested to see though how much, if it hurts them in terms of getting into the tournament or seeding or anything like that, those early season losses for them. But I thought they looked really good today, Illinois. I mean, credit to them. We'll talk about some of the shortcomings for Indiana today, because there definitely were a couple pretty glaring ones in my opinion. But I also tip of the hat. I think Illinois came in with a really good game plan against us, and they executed it both defensively and offensively. So, again, I think Illinois is just kind of peaking at the right time.
Well, and you made a good point about that. And also, we'd won 16 in a row. At some point, you're going to be that team that's like, when you're in Illinois situation, we want to be the team. We want to be the group that snaps that streak. So IU, to a certain degree, the number of the percentages, the odds are getting against you every game to keep a streak like that going in Big Ten play. I don't care who you're playing, to win 16 in a row like that. So that's the other thing that, that was, there again. And for a certain degree, I put this I think in the Discord or in one of my group texts, their season now is made by playing spoiler. They beat IU today. Their season is going to be made a little bit by how they play some of these better teams, and even going into the Big Ten tournament. It's not necessarily a team you want to see at the Big Ten tournament.
No, absolutely. Well, Jeff, let's maybe get into a little bit more of the game itself, the details there. So let's go ahead and start talking about a few pivotal plays. I don't think there's a whole lot to talk on here, and we can, touch on a few and then we'll move on to numbers. But do you have any pivotal plays that you wrote down?
I did, but it was more about runs. And it really showed up in the second quarter, Kathy. It started in that segment that I talked about right after when we started subbing. Illinois made a much better concerted effort, and it continued through the rest of the first half, where they just put the ball on the deck and they drove. And we really, really struggled. Not unusual, but even more so today, it seemed like we struggled to contain the guards and the dribble penetration, and we didn't really get much rotational help at times. And so we gave up a lot of shots. The first half, they won the points in the paint. Now, Indiana, in fact, they won the points in the paint for the game. But again, Hobby played well. Don't get me wrong. Kendall Bostic played well. But a lot of those points in the paint were coming from their guards who were getting into the paint for short shots or layups.
That's right. Yeah, I said the exact same thing sitting here with Sean as I was watching it in the evening. Since I didn't get the luxury of not having to work, I had was watching it, and we just looked a step slow on really both ends, but especially defensively. Like we weren't really fighting through the screens that Illinois was making, or like you said, we were slow on our rotation over to help and not switching. And it was just allowing them to get to the basket whenever they really almost seemed to want to. I mean, what they were shooting 71% or something at some point, that would go down a bit. Yeah. in the first half. And we did tighten that up, I think, some in the second half, but by then the damage was done, right? Like you mentioned, 16-point deficit in halftime, going into halftime. We made some good defensive adjustments and they didn't end up with 71%, but you allow a team to shoot 71%. It's really not a recipe for success, especially on the road. Yeah.
Yeah, at one point, you bring up a great point about the shooting percent. At one point, late in the second quarter, it was 90%. That's how well they were shooting and how bad our defense was. And you could almost see every time what little Kathy, I hope you saw maybe some of this, but every time you kind of saw Terry Moore on the TV, when they would show her or when you maybe panned by, you could just tell the veins in her neck and in her forehead were just, she was boiling, and you could just tell. But again, it was just one of those days. You hope it's one of those days. But they struggle. And this has been the issue with Illinois, with Genesis Bryan and Makira Cook, especially Genesis Bryan. Make sure I said that right. That we have really struggled to contain them off the dribble.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into the numbers I know later, but to your point, Makira Cook was the one who led them in scoring with 22 points. So it wasn't like Kendall Bostic, who in the past has really killed us, or Hobby. I mean, they both ended up with 12 points respectively, which is nothing to to sneeze at all. But we really got hurt by Bryant with 15, Cook with 22, and McKenzie with 14. I mean, we allowed 6 of their players, and then another 11 points coming off of their bench with Dolan. I mean, so we allowed 6 players for Illinois to get in double digits, and that's all they played. They only played 6 people deep. So, it just, I don't know. And we talked about that on our preview of Illinois, right? Like, one of the things we were worried about. We were worried about the dribble penetration and the dribble drives and being able to contain their guards. It was absolutely the thing that we talked about. And it just didn't look like we either, and I don't think that, I have a lot of respect for the coaching stuff. So I don't think it was that we weren't prepared from like a scouting perspective. It felt like exactly what Coach Morin said in the huddle. They showed her in between the third and the fourth quarter. And she said, for whatever reason, we're just not here today. Our head is just not here. They just did not look focused defensively. And to me, I think that was the biggest story of this game, where we aimed to keep a team in the, mid 60s, and we allowed 86 points for Illinois, like way off of what we would historically or typically want to see from this game. So any other pivotal plays, I think maybe to mention for me is just, again, in that third quarter, I thought we made some nice adjustments, and we came out in that third quarter and it looked like we were really going to get back into the game. We went on a 9-2 run, cut that lead down to 9 points, like you had mentioned a couple of times, actually 9 points, but then we turned right around and let Illinois go on a 7-0 run, and that leads right back up to 16 points at 51-35. And I thought that was a play. I know you had written it down. I had written it down as well. And then it wasn't a play. It was obviously it was a run of plays, but I think that was like the pivotal point where I just looked at Sean and I said, you know what, we just don't have it today. This isn't going to go our way. I don't think we're going to come back. And they would cut back a little bit. We just never could get past that 9-point hump. That seemed to be like the place where we get to. So to me, that was kind of the pivotal plays, if you will, was at the beginning of that third quarter.
Well, and I'll agree with you, but just as long as we don't say we couldn't get over the hump.
Sure, you're right. We need a new. We couldn't push past that.
Yes, we couldn't push past that mark. But anyway, I will say this, and it's more of a number, but I'll put it in here because it's pivotal. This tells you a little bit about how the first half went. Mackenzie Holmes had 0 rebounds in the first half, and that just kind of tells you. Now, in fairness to Mac, when their team's shooting 70%, there are not a lot of rebounds. But it's one of those telltale signs. It just kind of tells you that things aren't going well, and they're we end up losing the battle on the glass anyway. But the other thing, I'll go to the fourth quarter here real quick. Just about the time you felt maybe got it down like 6 minutes to go, got it to 9. Yeah. Illinois takes a timeout. Illinois finishes the game on a 19-8 run. That was the way the day went.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really all there is to kind of talk about is, I think, again, that second quarter to me was also pretty pivotal. Yeah, you have a note here. This is great. We were outscored 26-11 in that quarter, which is our worst quarter since either the Iowa or the Stanford game. I can't remember either whenever we put up 11 points. That was really not good. And, after that media timeout, especially, we only scored 4 more points in that quarter. So that was a rough one. And then to come out and, just have that 7-0 run, go erase everything we got back. But anyway, let's go ahead and just jump into the numbers, Jeff. Why don't you go first for us? We've kind of been dancing around a lot of them anyway, so let's just hit them.
Where to start? 14 turnovers. 14 turnovers. We only had one in the first quarter. Only one in the first quarter. And then we had 6 in the second quarter. So we had 7 at the half, and then you had 7 more in the second half. So turnovers as compared to 5 for Illinois. That's 9 possessions right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of alluded to this when I was talking earlier, but 11-2, that's bench points. Illinois, again, only played one person off of their bench, and she was able to put up 11 points. We had 5 players that got in, although Hannah Sandvik, to be fair, didn't even register a full minute. So whatever, we had 4 people play, Lily Meister with 9 minutes, Sydney and Jules with 6, and Lene Beaumont with 4. So but between the 4 or 5 of them, whatever number you want to say, they only could put up 2 points. And it wasn't just them. I think, we didn't get a whole lot out of Chloe Moore McNeil in terms of the offense that we've been seeing here the last few games either. But the bench in particular just really added nothing to us compared to what Illinois got from Dolan on their side. Any thoughts from you on the bench? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to jump it in on you there before you asked the question, but we didn't play them. You look, we brought Lene in, Lene some early on. She played 4 minutes. I think those were all in the first quarter. She never played again after that. And Lily struggled today. Lily had maybe one of her worst games I've seen her play in her year plus, almost 2 full years at Indiana.
Yeah.
And again, plus minus is a flawed stat, but Lily played 9 minutes and was minus 19.
Yeah, that is not good. Did you see her? They showed her sitting over talking to Coach Rhett at one point in between right after, I think she had a really bad turnover, and I think Coach Moran really laid it to her, and she was visibly shaken on the sideline. I don't know if you picked up on that on the TV.
I did not see that one. I may have had my head in my hands at that point. Who knows?
Yeah.
But her and Mac also combined for 6 of the 14 turnovers. I mean, your post players can't be almost half your turnovers, and so you talk about that number and. Again, I don't want to get into it too deep here but Sydney got 6 minutes. I guess that's better than nothing, but I would have liked to see, and I know they probably had her on a hard minute limit, but if 6 minutes was the limit, I'm not sure there was much benefit in playing her today, and then instead of just saving her for Thursday and get her back out there. But made me wonder at times. I even texted Ari in my group. Ari and I were back and forth. Made me wonder if she had re-aggravated something or she felt something in her foot. But she did come back in right after I texted him that. But she only got 6 minutes. From that standpoint, any other notable numbers for me? Illinois shot 53%. That tells you about our 53%.
Defense. Exactly. And like we had mentioned in the first half, I think they shot 60-something% in the first half alone. Yeah, 61% in the first half. You just can't allow that when you're allowing a team to get that close to the basket, getting such high quality looks. That's going to be tough to beat any team. We also got beat on rebounds 30-26, which wasn't quite as bad. But again, when you're allowing a team to make that many shots, that you're not going to have the many, rebounding opportunities. The problem is that, again, we allowed 8 offensive rebounds. So even when they weren't missing a whole lot, I thought there was a couple times in particular, I thought Yarden really could have tried harder for a couple of those defensive rebounds, and they just kind of took it right away from her. And so just stuff like that all over the game felt really disappointing to me. A bright note, I guess we can talk about a positive, was we shot 89% from free throw. The downside with it, we only shot 9 free throws, again, to 24 free throws for Illinois. I don't feel like the officiating was one-sided, though.
No.
I just felt that Illinois was way more aggressive in getting to the basket. And, we're not only when we're not stopping them, but when we didn't stop them, we were fouling them, and you were putting one of the best free throw shooting teams, not just in the conference, but in the nation on the line. it's just a very bad recipe for going in and on the road. And it really turned out in a 20-point loss today. So I just all around, there was not a whole lot of positives to kind of touch on number wise. 15 assists on 26 made field goals. I guess you got that. I don't know.
Well,
I'm not real excited about that either, though.
But let's go back to the fouls a little bit on the free throws. The officiating wasn't bad today. It really wasn't. I thought it was as good. The crew did a pretty good job. But with 45 seconds to go and you're down 13, 14, there aren't enough possessions left. Why are we still fouling? Why are we fouling and then putting them at the line? So what could have been maybe, again, I know it's not about moral victories, but in the net, margin matters. At least that's what we found this year. In the net, margin matters. So you took what might have been a 13, 14 point loss and took it up to 20. All right. And so I didn't understand that philosophy at the end. And that, so that accounted for some of their free throws. But back to and I've talked about it on this show, the old Bob Knightism: make more free throws than your opponent shoots. Illinois did that.
Nowhere near that. It was very lopsided.
I do want to throw a number out there just because, again, Indiana kid. And again, I think that's one thing that I'm not sure this team quite gets is that a kid like Kendall Bostic, this is her game. She grew up in Indiana, played high school ball in Indiana. Maybe she didn't, but she probably, would have maybe have been an IU player. I don't know what the recruiting process like. We may have offered, may not. I don't know any of that. But Kendall Bostic, 12 points, 11 rebounds for a kid that, grew up in the middle of Indiana, central Indiana. That's the kind of game they seem to get. And we got to understand that a kid like Kendall Bostic is going to come in and give us her best effort. And I thought, again, back to the beginning, what you said, Kathy, in the banner moment, don't think, and Coach Morin said it in that break, just don't think we really were ready for them to come out and do that to us. I think the kids thought, Illinois will be okay, but they'll fade. No, they're playing better.
Nope. Yeah, absolutely. I think, we would also be remiss not mentioning our 3-point shooting was not there for us today. We ended up with 6 of 20 from 3 at only 30%. And, again, back to what I was saying at the beginning, I think Illinois executed their game plan against us exactly how they wanted to do it on both ends. And this is where I think it really showed up. Like they weren't, too concerned about making Mackenzie Holmes, doubling her and being really aggressive on her. I thought they just really had a nice game plan defensively of shutting our perimeter players down. And you saw that with Sarah Scalia only going 2 of 8 from 3, Chloe Moore-McNeil 1 of 4, Yarden was 3 of 8. Those were the only 3 people that took 3-pointers for us today. And that's how we ended up with only 30%, six 3-pointers, which for us is not a good recipe for what this team is. And Mackenzie, she got her points that, right above her average at 24, but they shut everybody else down. And I think that's different than say what we saw with Purdue, who was very, much trying to shut Mackenzie down, and then we lit them up from outside. Or Nebraska would have the same kind of, philosophy against us. And so this, to me, seemed to be on both ends, where Illinois just found that recipe of success. And we saw it again in this 20-point loss, where drive the ball against us with their guards, and then, shut our 3-point shooting down on the other end.
Yep, I agree.
Any other numbers, Jeff, you want to talk about, or do you want to jump into game ball and Curtis Worker?
Yeah, let's jump into the game ball.
Yes, let's do it. Okay, so you get to go first since I'm hosting. But for those of you, real quick, before we talk about today, our numbers so far this year, Mackenzie Holmes leads the way with the team with 10, Sarah Scalia with 5, Sydney Parrish with 3, Yarden Garzone and Chloe Moore-McNeil also each have 3 game balls. So Jeff, for you, who do you give your game ball to?
It's going to be Mackenzie Holmes, but it wasn't a quintessential all-around great Mackenzie game. She played well on the offensive end, 10 for 14, 4 of 5 at the free throw line, but she only had 2 rebounds. She also had 3 turnovers. She did have a block in 31 minutes, but again, I said this earlier, and plus minus can be a flawed stat, but she was -1. So when Mackenzie was on the floor, we were playing them even. And I think that's one of the things I texted with my other group I was with today. I'm not sure you could take Mac out for very long today. And I think we kept trying to play rotation. Yeah. And I think that may be something that the staff will look back on and be like, that's just, we got to find a way to get Mac at 30 seconds here, maybe 60 seconds here. But that idea that you can take Mac out at that 6-minute, 5-minute mark, get her a couple minutes of rest. In a game like today, you needed her on the floor because the other things just weren't working well enough. And so, but I'm going to go Mackenzie Holmes here. But again, it was not a great performance by Mackenzie, but she is the game ball today for me.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't something that we're going to look back at this season and say, that Illinois game on the road was a vintage Mackenzie home game. No, I thought, she ended up with 4 fouls too, and at least 1 or 2 of them. One in particular just was not a good not sometimes there's good fouls, but it was not a smart foul at all, where she just reached in on somebody on the perimeter. There was another one. She just seemed really frustrated on one of Illinois' runs, and she ended up fouling him. So 2 of those fouls. And I think that kind of hurt her too, in terms of, you saw a lot where coach was trying to do this offense defense for her. And that's the only reason I think Lily ended up with getting nine minutes as well. But yeah, Jeff, I agree with you. I don't know who else you would give the game ball to. So I agree with you. Mackenzie gets her 11th game ball of the season. So with that, we'll switch over to the Grace Berger Hardest Worker Award. I honestly am still kind of at a loss on this one. I think this one's going to be a lot harder to think about. But before we cast our votes, so let's talk about what we have so far. So Sydney Parrish, Mackenzie Holmes, and Lexi Bargesser all lead the way with 5. Chloe Moore McNeil real close behind them at 4. Sarah Scalia, Lene Beaumont with 2, and Lily Meister has 1 so far this year. So Jeff, I think you can go a couple of different ways, but who do you give your Grace Berger Hardest Worker?
Yeah, we could talk about Yarden here a little bit with 17 points. You mentioned her 3 for 8. She had 8 rebounds, 3 assists. But again, she was minus 18. I just have a hard time. Nobody off the bench really gets any recognition here. And I have a hard time with Chloe or Sarah because I didn't feel like I felt like they disappeared for big stretches of the game. I'm actually going to go Lexi Bargesser. Lexi had 6 points, 2 of 4 from the field, 2 of 2 at the line. She really was battling early. She had a couple of key offensive rebounds. In fact, all 3 of her rebounds were on the offensive end.
Yeah.
She had 5 assists and a steal. So in 35 minutes, and of the starters outside of Mac, she was the best on plus minus. She was minus 11, which again, not great. And again, a flawed stat, but I just felt like Lexi really was playing well today when she was out there. Now, again, she's not scoring a big ton of points, but I just felt like there were things happening when she was on the floor. And like I said, the 5 assists for me, because you mentioned it earlier, Yarden, there were times I didn't think Yarden went after. I mean, she had 8 rebounds, but there were some she didn't really go after strong.
Yeah, I think Yarden could have easily ended up with the double-double. I know there were at least 2 or 3 defensive rebounds that she just had them taken right away from her. So it's hard for me when I see that even though you want to look at the box score and say, hey, Yarden had 17 points and 8 rebounds. I just think there were times again where she kind of disappeared on us and didn't quite put up the fight I would have liked to see, especially when our team is down by double digits. You need every possession you can get and not allowing Illinois to get second possessions. Sarah ended up with the 10 points, like you mentioned, but it was 2 of 8 3-point shooting again. So she just wasn't quite there. The nice thing with Sarah, she didn't have any turnovers. So that was good. But yeah, at the end of the day, I ended up kind of thinking Lexi Bargesser as well. I really wrote down, 2 of those rebounds were really strong offensive rebounds in that first quarter for Lexi. And, the 5 assists leading the team there too. Was something for me. So I agree with you, and we'll give Lexi her 6th Grace Berger Hardest Worker of the Year award for her.
That puts her in the lead, doesn't it?
I think it sure does. She just jumped up there. So,
hey, real quick, while we're here, let's talk real quick about this. I'm not trying to take over here, but I want your opinion on this because I put this in the Discord earlier today. And you never want a player to get hurt, and having Sydney Parrish being hurt has been a negative for this team. But if anybody benefited from it, Lexi Bargesser has benefited 100%. It immensely with this team and what she can provide for this program going forward.
Absolutely, Jeff. I really agree with that. And, if we could keep this bottled up and somehow magically over the summer fix her field goal shot, I think she could be a real weapon for us next year. She's got some sneaky speed to her as well, I think as well. But she's been handling the ball real well. She sees the floor, her 5 assists tonight. And so, yeah, her development over the last 7 or 8 games I think this is the 8th game now she's been starting somewhere in that neighborhood. So her development in those games has been just night and day. You know, there was times all the time we were talking about how, you know, nobody on the bench when Sydney was starting was coming in and giving us any production, where now we have Lexi starting and playing, you know, in the, you know, she played 35 minutes tonight. So she went from hardly contributing off of the bench to now playing 35 minutes per game. And, you know, contributing, even though, again, people might look at the 6 points and be like, no, I don't think so. But there are other things to the game of basketball than simply scoring points. Yes, you need to be able to put more points up than your team. We obviously didn't do that tonight, but we've seen some double digits points from Lexi. She had a double, I think, or really close to one last time. So yeah, Jeff, to your point, no, not excited that Sydney's been hurt, obviously, but in terms of pure player development, it has been fantastic for Lexi, and she's taken advantage of it.
I agree.
Well, with that, before we leave our numbers behind, we do have our MAC watch still going on, even though she has now officially passed Tyra Best for our IU women's program record. We are now looking at our overall basketball program record. So tonight with Mackenzie's 24 points, she now has 2,413 points. She is 25 points behind Steve Alford and exactly 200 points behind Calvert Chaney. So still right on pace to break that Steve Alford total there, probably before the regular season is over at her current pace. The other person we've been watching is Sarah Scalia in terms of made 3-pointers. So she in one season. So she's with her 2 today. She's got 81. She is 26 3-point field goals away from surpassing Steve Alford's season record that he has with 107. So that is our now Mac and I guess Sarah Scalia watch that we have.
You know what? We should change this to like record watch or something like that. Now
something like that, yes.
But we actually probably need to do a little bit of this on, and you're not going to be with us for the next couple shows, but we probably need to look at a little bit. I know somebody had posted this in the Workaholics a couple of games ago, but I believe she's actually nearing in, if she hasn't got there already, like 2,000 career points. I mean, because
right.
If you combine her Minnesota time with her Indiana time.
That is correct. Yeah, I did read that somewhere as well, that she's closing in on 2,000. So
we may want to kind of put that. I'll see if I can work on that this week and get it into the run.
Yeah, that'd be a great accomplishment for her too. So anything else you want to talk about on this game in particular, or should we talk about the one coming up on Thursday?
Oh, let's move on to the next one, because I think this one was not good anyway, so I think we beat it to death.
Yeah, I think so. That was enough. 32 minutes on that. Oh, we're done. Okay. So hopefully Thursday, we're going to not see a repeat of either tonight or what we saw earlier this year when we played Iowa at Iowa, because on Thursday, we do have the Iowa Hawkeyes coming into Assembly Hall. The game is going to tip off at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. It will be on Peacock. So I'm sure everyone is well aware at this point that Caitlin Clark just broke the NCAA record for the women's NCAA record in scoring them just the other night. Last Thursday when we went off for 49 points in that game against Michigan. Everyone's probably pretty well of Iowa as well, but we're going to go ahead and cover some numbers in case you're not into all the details. So Iowa is currently number 5 in the net in terms of record. They are 23-3 overall, 12-2 in the Big Ten. In terms of the history between us and Iowa does lead the series all time 54-22, and they have won the last 2 matchups. Iowa won in Iowa City, as I mentioned. That was back on January 15th. The final score on that was 87-57. And previous win for IU was in Bloomington last year, where we won 87-78. I'll talk real quick about their head coach and team stats, Jeff, and then you can talk about some of their individual players.
Gotcha.
So Lisa Bluter is in her 24th season at Iowa. She earlier this year became the all-time winningest coach in that program record. She is now 850 wins and 391 losses overall record. Underneath Lisa's Coach Bluter's watch, Iowa has been to 21 postseasons with her at the helm, 17 NCAA and 4 WNIT performances. So really just a great program that Lisa Bluter has been building there in the 24 years that she's been there. From a team perspective, so offensively, they lead the conference and put up 92.7 points per game. Defensively, they're 10th in the league at 70.8 points per game that they allow. In terms of shooting, they're second in the league, shooting 50.6% field goal, and second in defensive field goal percentage as well at 39.8%. From a three-point shooting effectiveness, they are 37.6% from three, which is third in the league. And defensively, they are fourth at 29.5. Interesting, not only do they make a lot of the baskets, three-pointers that they put up, but they are averaging 10.7 threes per game, made threes per game, which is clearly first. In case you were curious about where we're at, we make around 8 normally per game, so which makes 8.5, where we're fourth in the league on that. Continuing on their good shooting, Iowa shoots 77.7% from the free throw line, which is third, and they are second in rebounding margin at 8.1. And then finally, turnover margin, they are ninth in the league at 1.15 turnovers. They commit 13.7 and force 14.9, so about even on turnovers. But Jeff, why don't you take us through some of their individuals?
Hey, this Caitlin Clark kid, this young woman.
Who's that? I've never heard of her.
Anybody's heard of her. I'm not going to go through a ton of the stats here on Caitlin. I think everybody knows what Caitlin can do. What I think will be interesting, and I think it was Penn State, Kathy, that played Iowa a week or two ago and really tried to limit some of the 3-point shooting. And Stolke went for like 45. 45, 47. I mean, something like that. And I think it was Penn State. I might be wrong about the team. Don't quote me on the team, but somebody in the Big Ten basically did that where they basically, we're going to guard Stolke one-on-one, whether she gets, she gets. And they held Clark fairly well in check, but Stolke goes off for like 45 or 47. And that's the kind of team they got, because you look at Hannah Stolke, 6'2" sophomore, averaging 14 a game. She's shooting 64%. She's a 7.7 rebounds a game. Kate Martin, 13 a game. So they've got puzzle pieces around her. And again, we all focus, and I think a lot of us get tired of hearing about Caitlin Clark because of what we see from the media standpoint of it, but she is a legit player. And then you start putting the puzzle pieces around her. And then Gabby Marshall absolutely killed us in Iowa City. She's only averaging about 5 a game, but she had a big game against us in Iowa City. So again, they've got the puzzle and the pieces put together to make a deep run. Their biggest thing is they are not a big turnover team. And I think this is, when you watch them, it's kind of surprising because you see some of their athleticism and you see some of their instincts, the fact that they really only force about, what'd you say, 14, almost 15 turnovers a game, compared to like an Ohio State, a Michigan State, a Penn State even, who are really, really up there in turnovers, on opponent turnovers with that. And again, but you also look at this roster. And I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but it is loaded with seniors outside of Stolke, Caitlin Clark, senior. Right. Now she can come back, but but again, this Iowa team next year could look, and again, I know we're talking about this year, but I'm just kind of looking forward to the two programs moving forward. This team could look entirely different because Clark, Martin, Marshall, Davis, all likely not going to be there next year.
Yeah, Clark would be the big wild card to see if she comes back for her 5th year, but we know for sure Kate Martin, Gabby Marshall, and Molly Davis they're already in their 5th year. Right. So they will not be coming back for sure. So the only person we know, well, we don't even know it's guaranteed because in theory she could transfer, is Hannah Stolke coming back of their starting 5. So that is interesting. I don't know. We need to belabor the individual numbers anymore.
Nope.
People also forget, though, along with Caitlin Clark's and her scoring, the thing that she can also do is she can really pass the ball. She knows exactly how to get it in. That's what she made Monica Sonano look so good last year, because she got it into a position where she could hit her, even in transition. And I think we're seeing that again with Stolke this year as well. Like you mentioned, she put up 40-something points. It was Penn State, right? I think it was in that game. So I think, what hurt us last time is, we just seem to kind of forget about some of the surrounding pieces around Caitlin Clark. And as much as, the media makes it out that it seems like Caitlin's the only one playing at times, like she plays all 5 positions, right? And puts her stat line up there and leaves it up the whole game. There are 4 other players that are playing for Iowa, and they are all pretty capable people, with 2 other ones scoring, on average double digits with Stolke and Martin. And you mentioned Gabby Marshall, and Molly Davis isn't much of a scorer, but she is, averaging over 3 assists per game too. So she's really there as a facilitator. So I think they have a lot of the pieces. And to me, Jeff, you tell me if you agree with us or not. I think the goal has to be making sure that none of those other 4 players go off and have a 20, 30 point night. In addition to Caitlin Clark, because you're not going to keep her much below, 30 points. She's had very few games below 30 points. So you keep her maybe in that mid 20 range or so, but you can't let a Gabby Marshall or a Molly Davis or somebody go off for another 20 point game.
No, I agree. And I think that's got to kind of be the strategy is you got to try and stay up on Marshall and Davis a little bit. And who am I forgetting? Stolke I think you talk about Stolke. Martin is the other one. Yeah. I'm sorry. Martin and Davis, especially along with Marshall, those 3, you just can't let them get going. And Stolke, I'd take my chances with Mac, matching up with her in the post. The key comes down, can you get Chloe? And again, I think it has to be Chloe. I don't think it's Lexi. I think you need Chloe to be on Caitlin Clark and do as best she can. And knowing that the defense hasn't been quite as good as it was last year, but is capable of putting together some performances when they get locked in defensively. And I would start with Chloe on Clark, and that's where we go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Any of her hoop stats that we've been kind of talking about, anything there that you want to touch on between these 2 teams? It looks very interesting on paper.
Yeah, very even matchup again on paper, and what should be on the floor a good matchup. It shouldn't have been a 30-point game in Iowa City. It's another one of the games like today where when somebody punched us, we didn't respond very well. The only game of the games we've lost, the only game where we really responded well was the Ohio State game. Yeah. And the other games we've really kind of got knocked off our feet and haven't really been able to back up. The one thing that jumps out to me here, Kathy, is, and again, appreciate you doing all the run sheet and getting it ready for today. The rebound rate. I used 65th. I was 19th.
Yeah, that one surprised me too, Jeff. I actually would have thought I know their rebounding margin was pretty good. I just didn't expect them for a rebounding rate to be 19th in the nation. So just to remind people, her hoop stats is a national ranking. An interesting one to me is points per possession. IU is 2nd in the nation at 1.02 and Iowa at 1st at 1.04. So I don't think we're going to be, assuming, we're back at home and we can make our 3-point shots again, it's going to come down to who can step up their defense, which again, her hoop stat defensive efficiency, Indiana is 14th in the nation and Iowa's 22nd. So again, very close to each other, even on the defensive side of it. And, we always, joke about Iowa not having defense, but their defense has actually not been too terrible this year, So I think in paper, this should be an interesting matchup. And, we got a sold out crowd coming in over, 17,000 people. By the way, I heard on the secondary market, those ticket prices are going for over $400 a ticket, by the way.
Yeah. White out for a black uniform.
In a white out with black charcoal gray uniforms. I hear they're more of a dark charcoal gray in person, but anyway.
You didn't watch the game yesterday.
I did watch the game yesterday for whatever we want to talk about with
that's
it.
What you're going to see. That's what you'll see on Thursday from the women.
Yep. Same thing. So anyway, back to the Iowa game. Yeah, Jeff, the keys to me, our defense has to come back, and it has to be all 5 of our players locked in on defense, talking, switching. We cannot be a step slow like we were tonight, or we're going to have another 20 or 30 point loss at home.
I think it'll be also be interesting. And I'm not trying to hold out a lot of like, oh my goodness, it's the Willis Reed moment or like the Larry Bird moment when they get up from the injury and they come back to lead. But I'll be interested to see how much Sid plays on Thursday.
Right.
And if Sydney, and I'm not expecting more than 20 minutes after today, if she would have played 10, 12 minutes today, I could have seen her getting 22, 23, 24 minutes on Thursday. Only 6 minutes today. I don't see how you jump 20 minutes, get her to 24, 25. But anything.
I don't think she starts either. Do you?
No, not again. I don't think so.
Coming off the bench. Yeah.
But you know what? After today's performance, I know this probably doesn't work at the college level like this. And again, they're 21-4. I think part of the thing is we've gotten so used to being successful with this group, with this program, that we really are taking losses very, very deeply. And like, oh my goodness, like the sky is falling because of a loss. Yes, it's because the way they lost. But let's remember, at the end of the day, they're still 21-4. And right now, I know people are freaking out because of where the net is. The NCAA had their reveal the other day, and Indiana was 15th of the 16th. There's a lot of time left. There's teams around us who are going to lose more than we do. There's teams behind us who are going to win more than we do. You just got to play right now. This is where Terry Morin comes in. And I believe what Terry talks about is process. You can't worry about, it's not a macro thing. You got to stay micro. Get better tomorrow, get better on Wednesday, be better on Thursday than you were on Monday in the game. But don't worry about that big macro. Make the tournament. And once you make the tournament, then anything can happen. Yes. Would you like to be at home? Heck yeah. But there might actually be some matchups out there that would be a little better for us if we're a 5 seed on the road or a 6 seed on the road, from that standpoint.
We saw that when we made our Elite 8 run a couple of years back. I'm pretty sure we were a 5th seed then too, right? And
I remember that was in the bubble situation though, where everybody was down in Texas for that year.
Oh, was it? I thought that was the year after. Okay.
No, the year after is when we got beat by UConn. We were home.
That's right.
I can't remember who we beat in the first round, but beat Princeton on Grace's life. But anyway, again, stick with the process here. Stick with the process, but Sydney makes this team better. I'm not trying to take anything away from Lexi. That's not the point. But Sydney makes this team better, and so if there's a healthy Sydney Parrish that can get us, again, I'm not hopeful, but if she can get us 20 minutes on Thursday, that's huge. Especially if she can play as close to normal as possible.
Yeah, if we can get definitely more than the 6 minutes that we had today and a little more production from her, I think that's going to be giant for us too. And just somebody else that has to come in off of the bench. I think this is going to be another fast pace, pretty, physical game. And we're going to need to be able to get our starters some time here. On the bench. So I guess for me, keys to the game, Jeff, are what I've already mentioned, defense. And then of course I think rebounding, one we've been talking about all year. I think that rebounding rate, even though 65th in the country doesn't sound great from hoop stat, I think when we first started, they were really close in that 80 or 90 range. So they've moved up. Tonight won't help them a whole lot, but they're going in the right direction. So those are my 2 keys. Do you have anything else, or do you disagree with either of those?
Well, the other thing I'll throw in there, I agree with those 2. It's typical coach speak, and then turnovers as well. And we got to shoot the 3 better than we did today. We have to shoot the 3 like we're capable, especially at home. We need a home 3-point shooting percentage like we normally have.
Yeah, with that crowd on our side, we should. So, well, good. Let's quickly talk about what's gone on around the Big Ten then. So Thursday, the key matchups that we saw, Illinois went into Penn State and handily beat Penn State there, 86-71. So again, like Jeff and I mentioned, Illinois is playing well at the right time. They finally seem to, whatever woes they had at the beginning of the year, starting to figure it out. I mentioned already, Iowa beat Michigan, and when Caitlin Clark broke the record, that was 106-89. They won that game. Sunday, Michigan State went into Michigan in Ann Arbor and beat Michigan 70-66. And then Penn State went to Maryland and lost again 77-62 at Maryland. Games to kind of watch maybe before our Thursday game. Tuesday, Northwestern goes into Nebraska, and Wednesday, Michigan State goes up to Mackey Arena. Any overarching thoughts, Jeff, that maybe give your thoughts on Penn State? Anything there? They've lost 2 now, Thursday and then again on Sunday. I'm a little surprised with Penn State. I thought with Owusu and Marisa back both healthy that they would be putting up a little bit more of a fight and winning a couple more games, especially on the road. But what are your thoughts on that?
They're not deep, and they lost one of their starters to another starter to a knee injury, and so they're just not deep. And so when you don't have to guard somebody, then that makes it easier to guard Marisa and Owusu. And let's face it. Even with that, Penn State, we talked about, was going to be maybe a middle of the pack team. Illinois is finally playing the way they should have, so I wasn't surprised that they went into Happy Valley and won. And Maryland has some talent. They've just been underachieving for the most part. I mean, realistically, outside of the top 3 in the Big Ten, you look at the standings, it really has been a middling conference, really. I mean, the number 4 seed right now, if the season ended today, the number 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament is going to have 6 losses.
Yep, absolutely. So, then let's just give a quick update on the standings. So, Ohio State is 13-1. Iowa is second and 12-2, and this loss dropped us to 12-3. Nebraska right now is still hanging on to that fourth spot at 9-6, but right behind them is Michigan State at 8-6, Maryland 7-7. Then you have Penn State, Michigan, and Illinois all bunched up at 7-8. So I think Illinois, I wouldn't be surprised to see them start moving up now with the way they've been playing. They're probably they seem to be playing with just a lot of confidence on their end too. Overarching thoughts though, Jeff, not knowing what's going to happen here, this game on Thursday, obviously to me, this loss today has made it just that Thursday game becomes a must-win game. Absolutely does. If you want to have any shot at trying to claw into that a shot of a chance, we're now 2 games out behind Ohio State, and then you got to get some luck from some other people maybe going and upsetting Ohio State, or maybe even an Illinois is playing Iowa later this year yet too. Maybe Illinois can go in and sneak a win against Iowa as well. But what are your overarching thoughts and path for us to still get a shot at that Big Ten championship?
Slim and none.
Yeah.
That's what my dad used to say when we used to play golf together. My dad would be like, especially like a really long putt, I got 2 chances to make this, slim and none. I had some people on Twitter when I was running the account today that I basically said that any chance for winning in the Big Ten title is out the window, is gone. It's one thing if you need one team to get help. If you were chasing one team, you're chasing 2. Yeah, you can beat Iowa on Thursday, and that brings them back to you. But Ohio State has to lose twice. Yeah, they got to go to Iowa. Fine, they lose at Iowa. Who else is beating them? Right now, again, I realize this is why we call them upsets, but I just don't have much hope that Ohio State's losing twice between now and the first week of March.
No, I'm kind of the same way. So now we're just really, I think, what we need to focus on again is one game at a time. And maybe we'll parlay this into our final thoughts, Jeff, if that's all right. I guess for me, my final thought is, I think this loss is really made it a big hill to climb, not a hump to get over, but a hill to climb of any shot at repeating it as the Big Ten champions. But I think now you're still playing for, definitely being in that top 3 going into the Big Ten tournament. Hopefully we can get to maybe even a Sunday championship game, maybe win the whole thing. You still have so much to play for. Even if the regular season title is out, you still have the Big Ten tournament. And very important, I think, is seeding. And it would be fantastic to still be able to host at Assembly Hall, the first couple of rounds if we can, and redeem ourselves for last year as well. So I think, to me, those are my final thoughts. Take your 24 hours. Let's learn from this. Let's ratchet back up our defense on Thursday. Let's go in and let's kick some Hawkeye butt on Thursday.
Yeah, I agree, Kathy. You just got to come back and be ready for the next one. And again, if you win this, everybody will kind of forget today, the game at Illinois. But again, it is important, and from the standpoint of seeing, I think there's a lot of talk about the seeding because they get to play at home if you're in that top 4 of the seeds in the bracket. But I'm of the belief, just make the tournament. I'm not talking about as a 10 or 11 seed. If you're even a 5 or 6 seed, we've seen teams make runs out of that 5 or 6 seed component, the 4 seed component. Is it a little harder on the women's side? Yes, but we've seen teams get to the second weekend, get to the Elite 8. And this team is capable of making a run when they can put stretches of games together. The one thing that's been kind of disappointing with them is it doesn't seem like we can get enough stretches of those games together. Seems like we'll play 2 or 3 good games. And even the games we've won, that the fourth game might be kind of like, oh man, we're struggling with this. It just is not our A game. To make that, I don't care if you're hosting or not in the NCAA tournament, you got to string together 4 or 5 good games in a row. We saw this last year. They did not play very well against Miami, and they at home. So, from that standpoint. So I agree with you. And I agree with you. And what I said earlier, and appreciate you, kind of coming back to that. Just don't get caught up in the macro right now. Stay micro, keep on improving every day. And I'll kind of finish that with my final thought.
Sounds good. Same for me. Let's talk about what's up next then. All right. So up next for us, unfortunately, we've had some scheduling conflicts come up, and we will no longer be able to do a live post-game show on Thursday after the Iowa game. I am going to be traveling for some vacation time, and then Jeff has got a radio game to call. And so unfortunately, we cannot have a post-game show for you live on Thursday. However, on Friday evening, the day after the Iowa game, special guest from Assembly Call, Coach Brian Townsoni, will be joining Jeff to do a post-game wrap-up Friday evening. Again, that's Friday. They will be going live at 9 Eastern or 8 Central. So mark your calendars for that. Hopefully everyone's will enjoy a great Friday evening listening to two fantastic coaches talk about hopefully a great win on Thursday. On the men's side, Assembly Call will be back on Wednesday after the Nebraska game. So for us, if you want us to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assembly. Excuse me, it's at Back Home Network. It's youtube.com/@Back Home Network. You can be part of our private community as well. Go to assemblycall.substack.com to learn more. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos. A big thank you to Bob Thompson for our music that you heard throughout the broadcast. And most of all, thank all of you listening either live or after the fact tonight. We appreciate you all being here. And we will be back with you on Friday evenings, or at least Coach Jeff and Coach Tonsoni will be on Friday night. But until then, keep your elbows in, your eye on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. All right. And just to, again, to clarify anyone listening, it wasn't that Assembly Call Radio wasn't going to give us the Thursday night spot after the Iowa game. That they actually were. They were going to cancel Assembly Call for us again. But Jeff and I, neither of us are available anymore. So that is why that post game will be on Friday night instead. It seems like a fun Friday night. Maybe while I'm sitting down on the beach with a drink in my hand, I'll jump on YouTube and listen to you guys.
You do that.
Might make some interesting chats, but I doubt it.
You do that. Well, I'll be thinking about you Friday night when I'm doing the show from Indiana that you're on the beach in Cancun. So.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Well, good, Jeff. I think I'm going to head on out of here and try to go get some sleep at some point tonight, I guess.
I understand. Bye, everybody.
Cool. Good night, everyone. Thanks a lot.